Exactly how many interviews does Michael Pachter give? I swear, every single week there's a new thing from him about something he said. This week, he gave an interview talking about how Sony is going to cut price on both their systems this holiday, as well as a story about how the Xbox One X is a better purchase years down the road and not right now. Now, I'm going to have a lot to say about this. We're going to run both of these kind of Michael Pachter interviews into one video. Now, the first one we're going to touch on right now is going to be the headline. Sony will cut PS4 price to $249 and PS4 Pro price to $349 this holiday. And Sony will keep its price advantage this holiday. Now, I tend to actually agree with Michael on this one. I think the PS4 is primed to hit $259, just as the Xbox One S will be primed to hit $249. I expect both of them to maybe even on Black Friday get down to $200, where they'll pick up the majority of the sales. The PS Pro thing is a little bit a different story, but let's first let's see what he says, what the actual quote is. Now, he mentions that the PlayStation really doesn't have many kind of exclusives this holiday besides Gran Turismo Sport, but it doesn't really matter against the Xbox One because the PS4 will hold its price. And he goes on to say, I don't think Microsoft is all that competitive. Oh man, what a shot against Xbox there. Microsoft is not competitive whatsoever. Man, Pachter, say it ain't so. He goes on to say Xbox One S is priced the same as the PS4. And I don't think they're competitive at all with the Xbox One X, currently priced at $100 more than the PS4 Pro, and highly likely to be priced $150 more than the Pro by holiday. My guess is Sony will cut everyday PS4 price to $249 and the Pro price to $350 this holiday, and Microsoft will be too expensive, so Sony will keep its price advantage this holiday. Now, predicting a price cut during the holidays is kind of like saying the sun is going to rise because you know it's going to happen. It always kind of does for the most part. So yeah, I expect the PS4 to be $250. I expect the S to be $250. The Pro $349. That's kind of interesting because Sony recently announced the Destiny 2 bundle for $450. And I can see that bundle dropping in price, but not before that system comes out. And hear me out on this. So the Xbox One X launches on November 7th. If any time Sony were to do a price drop, it would be the week before or sometime a week before, a couple weeks, maybe the week of, to maybe get people to be like, hey, the X is $150 more expensive than the Pro, and that is not a good value for your money. That would be more advantageous for Sony, right? So I fully expect the Pro to remain at $400 until at least Destiny 2 comes out, because they're going to sell that white system and that bundle for $450. They're going to try to make as much money as they possibly can, and then when you start getting close to the launch of the X, they will drop the price. But will they also drop the price? Because as Pachter says here, he doesn't think Microsoft is competitive at all. His words right here. I don't think Microsoft is all that competitive. Right? And he certainly doesn't think the Xbox One X is competitive. Now, Sony may decide to keep the Pro at $400. And the reason being is they may feel they would want to make more profit on the system at $400 than cutting it to $350 and trying to push more stock. So that is kind of, it's a possibility. They could keep it at $400 just to try to squeeze more money out of it to get more revenue and then do a price drop next year sometime. But if they really kind of wanted to, put their foot on Microsoft's throat with this, yeah, they could drop it $50, get it $350 the week before, 2 weeks before the X comes out, and then you have a $500 Xbox One X versus a $350 PS4 Pro. And I'm sorry, $150 is a lot of money to a lot of people, and the value proposition at that point isn't really there in Microsoft's favor. If you're shopping, let me caveat this, if you're shopping and trying to choose between a PS4 Pro and an Xbox One X, if you're looking to buy one of those two, and you're like, I'm in the market for a PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, people might choose the $350 system because it's $150 cheaper. Now, Xbox One X, or Xbox fans in general, will, of course, go to the Xbox One X regardless. But yeah, so this is one of the interviews where he said, you know, they're getting price drops. But man, I don't think Microsoft is all that competitive. Those are some damning words from Pachter. But we all know what Pachter is, right? Usually the opposite is true with him. So this actually means Microsoft is competitive. And does this actually mean Sony's not going to drop price at all? Keep that in mind. Now the next one is an interview from today, actually. Xbox One X is more relevant purchase down the line. Right now it's too expensive. And then he says, an Xbox One S costs as much as an Xbox One S and a PS4 Slim combined. Why would you buy a Xbox One X instead of a One S and a PS4 to go with it too? Interesting quote. So he goes on. It's actually a longer interview, and there's some interesting stuff about the 4K TV stuff at the end. But we'll talk about this, and then I'll give my own opinion on it, right? And he was asked if the Xbox One X at its current price will actually get any meaningful market penetration. And Pachter says, I don't think so at this price. I think it's too expensive. And everything is relative, obviously, and you always hear these false equivalencies about things costs. So you hear things like, Xbox One X is cheaper than a big screen TV, but my big screen TV will be useful for 10 years or more. And when I am done with it, it will still find use in my guest bedroom. I honestly have never heard that argument before about the TV thing whatsoever. This is like the first time I've actually heard about how Xbox One S is cheaper than a big screen TV. I've never seen anybody anywhere, whether it's Twitter or forums, bring that argument up. So that's kind of weird, right? And then he goes on to say that he thinks $500 is a lot, and that we've been trained since the PlayStation and since before them that the price people are willing to pay is around $300. He says Microsoft started this $400 price point with the 360. Sony made the mistake of pricing the PS3 at $600. PS4 was $400 and quickly dropped to $300. I don't know, did they quickly drop to $300 though? I don't remember them quickly dropping to $300. Microsoft quickly dropped from $500 to $400, but I don't recall PS4 dropping that quickly to $300. But I could be mistaken. He says, I just think people are willing to pay $300 for a console, but not $500. $500 is way too much. And given that you frequently see Xbox One S and PS4 Slim discounted to $249 or at least $399 with a good game bundled, the perceived price for both is $250 regardless of sticker price. I mean, that's an interesting point. Now, well, yeah, the reason the perceived price is $250 or thereabouts is because it's been like that. But the perceived price for the systems, especially at launch, they weren't no $250 because they were both, one was $400 and one was $500. I don't see how you could come along and say the perceived price for both is $250 or it always been $250. Because, I mean, he says, I just think people are willing to pay $300 for a console. And well, yeah, duh. I mean, there are more people in the pool willing to buy a console for $300 than there are willing to buy a console for $500. I mean, that's just common sense in business. But let's not forget here that the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and more so, did incredibly well. They sold incredibly well, like, out of the gate. The Xbox One was outselling the 360 for a long time, and the PS4 is on pace to do 100 million, and a lot of that is before they dropped to this $250 price point. So I'm not really sure what he's talking about here, about how the perceived price for both is $250. I mean, maybe right now because they actually are $250, but definitely not 4 years ago when they launched. So I don't know, Pachter. I don't know. Does anybody listen to this dude? Honestly, does anybody like actually take his stock advice? Because sometimes I just think he just says stuff to say things. Maybe he loves being interviewed or something like that. A lot of this stuff doesn't make sense when you actually delve deep into it. Then he starts talking about the 4K TV stuff. And he says, an Xbox One X costs as much as an S and a PS4 Slim combined. So if you don't have an Xbox One yet, why would you buy an Xbox One instead of an S and PS4 to go with it too? I've talked about that before. The question that comes up a lot now is why buy an Xbox One X? Why not get an Xbox One S? Or You know, like, that is an interesting question, and I guess the answer, and Phil and all them talked about it, it's like the Xbox One X is marketed to and for the consumer who knows what a teraflop is, who wants 4K, who has a 4K TV, who has a large amount of games and wants to play the best version of those games on console, who doesn't really want to play on PC. That is the person that the system is targeted to. But if you're not that consumer, then they have the Xbox One S, which still plays all the same games. I understand that point. A lot of other people understand that point, even though a lot of those people won't buy an Xbox One X because it doesn't appeal to them like it appeals to me. They understand there's two systems, one 250, one 500. They play the same games, one just plays it better. And if they're willing to spend the $500 on it, they will buy it. And if they're not, they'll get an S. But yet, Pachter, who's an analyst, doesn't seem to understand that concept. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just weird. And he goes, I just don't get it. Yeah, obviously you don't. You don't, dude. I don't think they are doing themselves any favor at this price point. I mean, I'd agree. Obviously, they would sell more at $400, duh. You know? But they've come on and said, hey, it cost us $5. Basically, they're selling the system at cost. They're not going to sell the system at a loss. So, I don't know what you want them to do. You want them to sell the system at $400 and take a $100 loss and then maybe ruin the profitability of the corporation or the division and then have those rumors about it being so. I don't know. Do you want that to happen? I mean, they're not making money selling the system, and they do have another system that plays the same games at cheaper. I don't think, I've said this before repeatedly, I don't think Microsoft cares what system you buy as long as you play on an Xbox. Whether it's an Xbox One X or a freaking Xbox One S or on Windows 10. I don't think they care what system you pick up. And from what I can tell, Michael Pachter doesn't seem to get that. I know they are selling the appeal of 4K, but let's be real, probably fewer than 10% of households have a 4K TV, and certainly way less than any other country. So who is waiting for this? Next year, maybe around the end of 2017, we'll be closer to 20% U.S. households and 10%, and then in 2018, we'll be at 35% and 20%, and at 2019, we'll be at 50% and 30%. So he goes, so yes, it'll be a more relevant purchase down the line, but at $500, if I only had that money in my pocket, I had to choose between an Xbox One S and a 4K TV. I would buy a 4K TV. Well, that's you, Pachter. That is you. And you just said before, TVs are like a 10-year purchase to you, right? You don't buy TVs that often, but it seems like video game purchases are a little bit different now. And he goes, so they're only appealing to people who have $1,100 because they have to buy a TV as well. This is the same problem Oculus faced. I really think the Xbox One X will not do well. I mean, Xbox has addressed this, has they not? They made sure that super sampling, which is taking that 4K image and downsampling it to 1080p, would be system-wide. So if you do have a 1080p TV, you can receive, you will be seeing a better image. Now, I understand that really doesn't come across in presentations or E3 demonstrations. That is something you're going to have to see for yourself, and that is something that Microsoft is going to have to, properly market. But you don't necessarily need you don't need a 4K TV to enjoy the Xbox One X, because it's going to have more benefits than just I can play games in 4K, faster load times, more stable frame rates, better draw distances. I mean, there's a whole bunch of slew of features that are going to make your games run better than if you were just playing on an Xbox One S. And I understand that maybe at $500 to you, that's not worth the upgrade. I get it. And I even get it for a lot of people who are going to watch this video and say stupid things in the comments because they clearly just don't understand, or things go completely over their heads. Like, I get it. But there are a contingent of people out there that just want the newest, shiniest stuff, that want the new product, that want that so they can play those games to the best looking version of them. And I'm one. I'm gonna get the X partially because GameStop is paying for it, But I also want the newest system. It's going to improve my backlog. I do have a 4K TV. But man, what is up? Michael Pachter just says some really stupid stuff sometimes, honestly. And I know it's the slow news week. There's not much to talk about. And this is interesting because I can give my opinion on all this stuff. But man, does he really think before he speaks sometimes? I mean, predicting a price cut for the PS4 this holiday? Pfft, please, a 4-year-old could predict that. That's not taking a risk or a prediction, you know? But anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the videos. If you did, you know what to do. And I'll see everybody in the next video. Later.